Okay, I'm doing this as a response to Trinity Delusion's analysis of Hebrews 1, 10 through 12. Trinity Delusion has done a whole series attempting to dismantle the high Christology of Hebrews 1 and trying to make it sound like that this is just how Jesus, this is the way that Jesus is better than the angels because God put Jesus, a man Jesus, in charge of his creation, not the angels. At the end of this video that he did, which he does not allow video responses to, he had said, be honest with yourself, contriving and self-deceiving is never going to do anyone a bit of good. I want everybody to keep this in mind when they watch this video in my response to what he had to say. Now, Hebrews 1, 10 through 12. I've said it before, Hebrews 1, 10 through 12 is absolutely nuclear against Arianism, and it is beyond nuclear to human Jesus theology, if it is about the Father talking to the Son. And it creates a major problem for human Jesus theology in particular, so much that there are some human Jesus heretics who just make up excuses. I can think of Prove Your Faith as one of them, why the book of Hebrews shouldn't be in the canon anyway. And may I say, you know you're a heretic when you think something in the Bible is wrong concerning your theology. You don't adapt your theology to fit Scripture, and you adapt Scripture to fit your theology. But anyway, Trinitydelusion says of Hebrews 1, 10 through 12, where I'm going to quote, "And in the beginning, Lord, you laid the foundations of the earth, you made the heavens with your hands. They will perish, remain forever. They will wear out like old clothing. You will fold them up like a cloak and disregard them like old clothing. But you are always the same. You will live forever." That's from the New Living Translation. Now he's saying that this verse is about God the Father. And I totally see why he would say that. Now he's insisting it's contextually about God the Father. I'm going to show you beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's not. But if this verse is about the Son, you can flush human Jesus theology down the toilet. So what is this verse about? Now, Trinitydelusion in his video says this is clearly about God the Father because, well, let's see. Beginning, Lord, you laid the foundations of the earth and made the heavens with your hands. Now, he appeals to Hebrews chapter 2, 6, and 7, where it says, let's read it, what are people that you should think of them, or son of man that you should care about him? You made him a little lower than the angels and crowned him with glory and honor over the works, and you set him over the works of your hands. Now, clearly, this is the Scripture saying to God the Father that they set Jesus over the works of his hands. Works of whose hands? God the Father's. And so, obviously, since Hebrews 1:10 is talking about the Lord and the work of his hands, it's talking about the God the Father. Well, here is a major problem, and it just seems like Trinitydelusion likes to give you all the info when it works against Trinitarianism, and either doesn't do his homework or doesn't give you all the info when it goes against his case. Here's a problem with that verse. You made him lower than the angels, crowned him with glory and honor over the works of your hands. The statement over the works of your hands in verse 2:7 does not occur in the two oldest and best manuscripts, namely the Chester Beatty Papyrus, which is also known as P46, and Codex Vaticanus. Doesn't include, those two manuscripts do not include that saying, and that's why if you look at the online Bible translations, you're not going to see that saying in Hebrews 2:7. Can we say with utter certainty that the author of Hebrews said that about God the Father? I don't think we can. So when in doubt, I'm going to say leave it out and understand that probably the best reading of Hebrews 2:7 is you made them lower, a little lower than the angels, and crowned them with glory and honor. So, with that being out the window, now we don't have a contextual reason to assume that Hebrews 1:10 is necessarily about the work of God the Father's hands. And I'm going to demonstrate why I firmly believe it is definitely about God. Now, Trinitydelusion says that if we make this verse about Jesus, it interrupts an and but pattern. Like in verse 6, and when he brought the firstborn into the world, God says, let all the angels worship him. But the angels, he says, he sends angels like winds. But to the Son, he says, and, it keeps going, and but. Well, it would be a little strange if all right, we're going through all this, we're contrasting Christ with the angels, section 8, or verse 8, it says, but to the Son, he says, your throne, O God, blah, 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 blah. And then in verse 10, all of a sudden, the author of Hebrews just screeches on the brakes and eliminates this whole comparison and contrast between the angels and the Son, and just says, in the beginning, Lord, you founded the heavens, and the earth is the work of your hands. And it's like, and then let's go back to continuing to contrast Christ and the angels. Doesn't make any sense. Really doesn't. It flows a lot more naturally if this is just another thing that the Father is saying to the Son. Now, if this is what the Father is saying to the Son, and I've done a video about this already, but I will reiterate it. In the beginning, Lord. Now, this is a direct quote from Septuagint version of Psalm 102:25. When the word Lord is translated throughout that psalm, when it's translated Lord, it is the divine name. So in essence, what the Father is saying, in the beginning, Yahweh, you laid the foundations of the earth. He is calling the Son Yahweh. Now, I know you could never abide that, anti-Trinitarians could never abide that. So I'll ask you this. People are called Lord in Scripture for two reasons by people. Number one, they are subordinate to the person, or the person calling them Lord is subordinate to that person. Is the Father subordinate to the Son? No. The other reason that you call a person Lord in Scripture is that person is God. If the Father is not subordinate to the Son, you tell me. And a person never calls somebody else Lord if they're acknowledging their lordship over other things, but not themselves or whatever. That's the only other. That's what some Arians will insist, but it's just not. It's just not tenable. There's no other instance of it being like that. So in the beginning, Yahweh, you laid the foundations of the earth. You made the heavens with your hands. Throughout the Old Testament, whose hands made the heavens and the earth? The Lord Yahweh. It's that simple. Keep in mind, this is a letter written to the Hebrews. Hebrews knew of no created intermediary creating the heavens and the earth. In the book of Isaiah, it said, God says, I'm there stretching out the heavens by myself. I didn't know about some created intermediary lackey making the heavens and the earth. And for human Jesus theologians, it definitely shows that the Son was there at the beginning making the heavens and the earth. And lastly, it says, they will perish, you remain forever. You fold them up like a cloak and discard them like old clothing. You are always the same, you will live forever. Always the same. And as it echoes in, I believe it's 8:13, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Immutable. And just as the way that David described the Lord Yahweh in Psalm 102:25 is unchanging, the Father describes the Son the exact same way. So with all this in mind, Hebrews 1:10 through 12 is clearly the Father talking to the Son, and you have to really contrive and deceive yourself to make it be that the author is slamming on the brakes, and all of a sudden it's the author of Hebrews talking to God the Father, and then resuming, contrasting the Son and the angels. If this verse is about the Son, human Jesus theology is toast, and so is Arianism. And I would urge anyone believing either of those heresies, test it against Scripture. Test it against this. The Father is calling the Son Yahweh. And you tell me.